Hi there, I'm Bob Schindler, and I want to welcome you to the inaugural CEDE Partners CSRM Reach Extended podcast. We're very excited that you would join us today. We're excited about this new initiative that's a part of CSRM and CEDE Partners, as well as the foundational partners of Reach Gathering, which include Bellevue Baptist Church, Lake Point Baptist Church, Perimeter Church, and UW Sports Ministry. To kick us off today, Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of the relationship between the two organizations, CSRM and what now is called CEDE Partners?
Thanks, Bob. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's a pleasure to see this partnership moving forward. The history, we are getting old, and we have got a few decades behind us. I don't remember when I first met Bob Dyer, who's your partner there. I think it may have been his parole officer that introduced us together. Just kidding. Love Bob Dyer. But Bob actually was on the CSRM board for a while. And we were doing a lot of things together. The summit, Bob was really involved with that. You were really involved with that. And there was a lot of different consulting relationships that we had. But it's nothing like it is today.
I remember, I think right after I started with what was then called CSO, I went to Atlanta for a meeting with your board, if I remember correctly, Greg. I think that was in like 2003 or 4, and that's where I first met you and got to know more about the organization. Then went to my first summit in Atlanta again in 2004, and so I've had the privilege of knowing you and be involved in your organization now for 13, 14 years, and it's been a very enriching thing. We can say, though, it's not always been perfect, has it, Greg?
No, it hasn't, and I think that as we talk about it, Bob, we hope that it's an encouragement to the local church, sports, rec, fitness ministers that are out there. You may not be getting along with everybody all the time either, but that doesn't mean that you can't work together and you can't see a bright future. And we actually came to a point, Bob, one of the most significant times, I think, in my history with this movement, in my experience with this movement, was when the principal leadership of CSO, then it was CSO, and CSRM got together, and I think it was about 48 hours, and we gathered and we just said, what do we need to say we're sorry for? What do we need to do together? What's God going to do with us? And we came out of there really refreshed, renewed, and I just think it's been wonderful. And Bob, I wanted to just have it on record that your spirit in that was a big reason why we've been able to move forward like we have. And your graciousness and also your insight for what was necessary to bring people together and how we could do these things. And I just want to thank you for that, my brother.
Well, Greg, here, as usual, way gracious beyond what I feel for myself. I just say, like to you, you just get to know me better, and you wouldn't feel those ways about me. But I know you are one of the people that are in the winds of in the sails of my life that can keep breathing that encouragement that I appreciate very much. And I very much agree with you about that meeting years ago. One of the things that we shared, as I remembered, is that we both organizations shared this idea that we're better together than we are separately. And so while it was hard at times or challenging at times to be together, we really wanted to figure out how we could work together. We were on mission in very similar ways to help the sports and rec and fitness movement in local churches, and we felt like, what could we do together? But as you mentioned, it began with talking about, is there anything in the past that we need to clarify, that we need to rectify, that we need to make good on? And I appreciate, and Greg, I would mention this, I think that's one of your strengths. I think you are very quick to acknowledge if there's something that needs to be done to rectify, or quick to acknowledge wrongdoing if and not intentional, but if there was something that was done that was that I came across that way. And so that spirit really, I felt like, set the table for those 48 hours for us to heal whatever needed to be healed, and then talk about what could we do in the future together. And what kind of came out of those meetings, Greg, as you recall?
Well, we looked at I would call it a map of what was needed, what was really being begged for or asked for from the local church folks, be they volunteers or professional sports ministers there. And we said, you know what, you do that really well, and he does that really well, and that person, and we kind of grafted out a little bit, and we set each other free to go do those things that we were good at, but then we also said, what can we do better together? And the first thing that I can recall was really the webinars. You guys have been doing them, but if I remember, and you can certainly feel free to correct me, but if I remember, you were saying, it's a struggle for us to do this month after month after month, and we said, well, could we help? Is there a way that we could help? And you guys were so gracious and say, come alongside of us, and we put together a team that was actually probably larger. It was larger than just CSO or CSRM, and it was CSO at that time. So that has pulled together for, what, Bob, 4 or 5 years anyway, a group that has planned those webinars, out of which I think gave us the trust factors and the relationships and the connections to actually go to reach, which was so pivotal in the movement.
Right, and Greg, I think one of the things that I've learned, and I've learned it through this partnership with us, is that partnership is really built when you do something together. That's when right. You actually take action together. Now that action can have a wide variety of things, but that's what we decided out of that meeting, is that we would start doing these webinars together because we did need help, as you mentioned. And out of that, we learned more about each other. We learned to trust each other. We learned to understand more about the perspectives that each of us had, the gifts that each organization had, the resources that each of us had. And so for several years, that really enhanced our relationship, to the point that then when we began to talk about reach, it was really a natural extension in my mind, Greg, as we thought, how can we now take another step to further enhance the movement? And at that point, Tim Conrad and UW was also involved in that, because again, you'd had a relationship with him, and we'd had a relationship with him, and he had that on his heart as well. So I just saw that as a very natural extension, but it was built on the trust of the partnership for those several years. How did you see that, Greg?
Absolutely, I saw it the same way, and it's didn't stop with CSO, now CEDE, and CSRM. It has now even expanded, as you mentioned. We've got these 6 foundational partners, and the crucial part that has come about as a result of that is that we've got 3 churches that are part of the foundational partners of Reach. So it's not just the paraministries that come and say, here's what you need, but rather we've sidled up alongside of the local churches and said, how can we help you? What is it that we can do? You're already doing so many things well. We just want to come alongside of you and serve you. And so I think that that whole thing is morphing, and we now even have, and it's a moving target here a little bit, but there's about a dozen paraministries that meet quarterly, and we pray. And we spend a significant amount of time praying, and praying for those of you that are listening right now. You got the earbuds in as you're on your treadmill or whatever. We pray for you. And we pray for the movement, and we pray for the people that you're impacting. And we also, to be part of that dozen or so ministry partners, goes back to, Bob, what you had just said, and that is that partnership doesn't mean we just like each other or we hang out with one another every now and then, but it means that we're actually involved in some sort of an effort together. And so all of these groups, Synergy and and Uttermost Sports and all these, we're all in some sort of an actual activity with them. Not all 12, but one or two. And I just see what started to happen with us, Bob, has expanded throughout the whole of the movement for the betterment of everybody.
Yeah, I agree with you, Greg. I think one of the encouraging things about this is, as we've tried to live out that value, in some way God has blessed that to catalyze that to other people, other ministries, other churches. So that's been some of the fun things for us as we've watched that come out of reach, where churches would connect and start a regular partnership of doing something together, where a church and an organization would connect in a new way, or organizations would connect in a new way. And it's really built on this idea that the movement is bigger than any organization. The movement is bigger than any one of us. And we just want to be a part of the movement, and the movement is enhanced when we unite. And so this podcast really is just another extension of that value, of that philosophy, that we just want to extend the movement by uniting further. And we hope to involve lots of different people in this podcast. This isn't just going to be a CEDE Partners CSRM podcast. Greg, why don't you talk a little bit about what we've kind of discussed and how you see that going forward and involving other people or other organizations?
Well, a lot of it's going to depend on those of you that are listening and watching this. We want you to contact us and say, what is it that you're in need of? Who do you need to hear from? What is it that you need to hear about? But we are hopeful that this is going to go on in a very regular basis in terms of timing, and we're going to be able to grab hold of some of the leaders, the young, the millennials, some who have led for a long time and are moving to the next phase of their ministry and career, interviewing them, finding out what God's doing in their hearts and their lives and what they see God doing. We're going to talk to people that are involved in planting churches in the 1040 window it's just amazing what God is doing where the gospel is very persecuted. We're going to talk to some professors. We're going to talk to practitioners at local churches. Our hope really is that this is not about Bob, you, or me, or our organizations, but it really is about the movement, therefore reach extended. And we can honestly say that we have a few ideas about what's going to happen, but we don't have a clue, really, what God has intended for us. But stay tuned, because it's going to come your way, and we know that God's behind this. We should say, Bob, that we have decided that we're not going to do the webinars anymore, and that this podcast is going to be somewhat of a replacement for that. But those are all archived. And why don't you tell them, Bob, about how they can get a hold of some of those?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. First, I'll comment on the archiving. Then I want to talk a little bit about, and Greg, you might be wanting to think about this, what's the difference between the webinars and the podcast going forward. But first, on the archives, on both the CSRM and the CEDE Partners website, those are archived by chronological order. We also are making available the top ones, as some people have voted on, and making those available in a separate set of top 10s, just so if you want to go back and look at those over the last 5 years, some of them more recently, some of the last couple of years, those are available. So we hope you'll take advantage of them. There was some great content there. One of the things that we felt like we struggled with, though, was we hoped that would really be interactive. At least I think Greg and I, as we talked about it, we hoped that people would engage more. But what we found was that was really a challenge. People were interested in the content, but it was difficult to get them engaged, and that was why we did the video webinar format to begin with. What we found, though, as we began to talk further, and this is some of how the culture moved as well, is that it's much better for the delivery of content to just have a one-way communication, where it's video and or audio like it will be for these podcasts in shorter chunks, 15 to 20 minutes, that people can access, as Greg was mentioning, whether you're commuting or whether you're running on your treadmill or whether you're doing your walking, you can access that. You can listen to part of it and go back and listen to it some more. So that one of the differences will be, while the live sessions will be available when they're being actually produced, the main distribution channel that we see, or the main distribution of these, will be the actual video and audio copies of those as they're going forward. So it's a little different in the sense of when it's available. Before it was available, Greg, as you remember, on Thursdays, typically in the afternoons, and if you couldn't get it, you maybe could watch it later, but we really didn't distribute that. Now we're going to try to really enhance the distribution so more and more people can take advantage of it. Any other differences, Greg, that you see between the videos and audio podcasts that we're doing now versus the webinars that we used to do?
Well, I think the main thing is that we're trying to address and react to, really respond to is probably the better way to say it, is that we're trying to understand that on a 24-hour clock around the world, we have a world that wants to plug in, and when we restricted it to 1 or 1.5 hours on a particular day, on a particular week, that maybe they could and maybe they couldn't. This is the kind of thing that they can access on their own time, and also put it into a time segment that's a little more conducive to a 15 or 20-minute commute or a 30-minute on the treadmill kind of a time. So we are, in fact, trying to help you in the local church access this information. And I think another thing that we're going to be doing in these times is providing you with the connections, with the actual things that are the people's websites and the people's newsletters or whatever they might be doing, their own podcasts and stuff. We're hoping that they'll come into on these different podcasts that you'll be able to take back and easily connect with them. So there's a lot that we're hoping for, Bob. We're down to our last couple minutes together for this, and last thoughts, Bob, or last insights?
Well, as you previously mentioned, we have some ideas. We've got some structural concepts of what we want to do content-wise, but we're really interested as well in hearing from you. There'll be a feedback mechanism for you to do that through our YouTube channel as well as on our websites. If you have some ideas about people that you'd like to see us interview, or content that you'd like to see us interact about. I do think one of the things that I would mention is it will be much more of an interview moderator kind of format than the webinars tended to be. The webinars tended to be more presentation. This will be a little more, in our minds right now, interactive and more moderating of interviews with 1 or 2 individuals that we'll be talking to. At least that's how we've sketched it out at this point, Greg. Isn't that the way you see it?
Right, and we've even started to talk to some of the folks, and we've got some practitioners already that are out there saying, we've got one guy who's saying, hey, wiffle ball works in the local church. And I would venture to say most people, Bob, are not doing wiffle ball in their church. But we've got a couple of these interviews that we've already started to engage in, and we're just excited about what God is going to do. So, Bob, we're going to close it out. Any last thing?
Yeah, we just would say again, thanks again for being a part of the movement. Know that you're prayed for. We want to support you and the ways that we're capable of supporting, and so we're trying to regularly pray for you. We want to provide this podcast. Again, if you have ideas, please pass them along. And we feel it's an honor just to come alongside what God is doing in your life. So thanks again for joining us, and again, keep looking for announcements that are going to be coming forward in the future.
And we're going to, on a regular basis on our websites, give you kind of the schedule so you can anticipate what's happening week to week or month to month. And we want you, as Bob said, to let us know what you would like, what you would need, how you could help. And know that this is all done for you, the local church practitioner who's doing the sport, rec, and fitness. You're our heart. This is why we do it. And it's not just about Bob and Greg. It's not just about CEDE and CSRM. It's about you. It's about how we can come alongside of you. And that's why we're calling it Reach Extended, because many of you at the Reach gathering are going to see this, and you're going to be able to participate in this. So keep in touch with us. We're awfully glad that you are listening to this, the inaugural, Bob, the very first, but many, many more. Thanks for tuning in, and however you do that. God bless you.